Hi, I'm Donna Wolfe from Naztazia.com.
In today's tutorial, I'll show how to use the newer I-cord tool to create an I-cord with yarn. This is very similar to the traditional I-cords that can be made with knitting, crochet, and spool knitting. For my sample, I'm using regular medium type of yarn. I'll be showing both the 3-hook I-cord tool as well as the 4-hook I-cord tool and how to use both. To begin, it helps to understand that the tool has latches that both open and close. The first step in using this is to cast on the initial loops to the tool to begin making the I-cord. For the 3-hook I-cord tool, I start by opening the latches and getting my yarn ready to weave around the hooks. If this tutorial goes too fast or too slow, be sure to use the gear icon and the controls on the player to adjust the playback speed. Something like 0.5 will make this tutorial go much slower. After I wrap the yarn around all of the hooks, I take the last hook and pull the bottom loop over the top loop to secure everything. Then I move all of the cast-on loops down the tool past the latch part. When I wrap the yarn, I wrap it between the top hook part and the latch, as the newly wrapped yarn needs to catch in the hooks so that the bottom loops can be wrapped over them simultaneously. I pull the tool down and then sort of up and around to help the bottom loops easily glide over the latched loops on the top section. And then I repeat this process of wrapping the yarn between the hook and the latch part around the tool. I find pulling the cord by the bottom section helps provide enough tension to close the latches, pull the bottom loops over, as well as keep the stitches relatively consistent in size. Surprisingly, I find this tool pretty easy to work with, and I just practiced with it for about an hour before doing this tutorial, so I'm going to give it high marks with regards to ease of use. I find that my stitches are relatively consistent. Perhaps after using this more, I will get extremely consistent stitches, as if I used either a spool knit crochet hook or the double-pointed knitting needles that I'm used to. Now it's time to cast off and remove the loops from the tool because my sample cord is finished. I close the latch on the last hook because I need to slide the last loop off the last hook and move it to the center hook. Then I pull the bottom loop over the top loop manually with my fingers. And then I repeat this process for the last hook. I take the loop from the middle hook and move it over to the first hook. I take the bottom loop and wrap it over the top loop so that I'm left with one loop remaining. I trim my yarn and can use either the latch hook's hook to pull the last loop through or my crochet hook to pull the trimmed yarn through to secure everything. A yarn needle is useful to weave in both the starting and ending tail ends. And this is what my sample 3-hook I-cord tool looks like once completed. Now moving on to the 4-hook I-cord tool, there's really not much different about it except it has 4 hooks and can produce a wider cord. The casting on process is both similar and yet ever so slightly different than the 3-hook I-cord. I do the same over, under, and over with the first 3 hooks. And then I wrap the 4th hook along with wrapping the top between the hook and latches again. Place the starting tail end between the 1st and 2nd hook, and then take that 3rd hook's bottom loop and wrap it over the top loop. And then the normal process of wrapping the yarn around all of the hooks between the top of the hook and the latch itself begins. This time there will be just 4 hooks to pull bottom loops over the top loops instead of the 3 hooks. At the end, there will be one more hook and loop that will need to be shifted over in the casting off process. I'm showing how the tool itself can be used instead of the crochet hook to pull that last tail end through the remaining loop. And that's how I use an I-cord tool.